think one of the crucial skills for a young PR practitioner, student practitioner, is an appreciation of public relations strategy, and within that becomes public relations tactics, and the whole planning process. It's absolutely vital that young people take this on and appreciate it and appreciate its significance. For me, there are a number of reasons why. First of all, it focuses real effort. And it improves quite definitely in many cases the effectiveness of company communication. It encourages a long-term view of where a company is going and what it wants to say. It helps demonstrate value for money when a PR consultancy is working for a client and when public money is being used. It minimises mishaps. It often reconciles conflict in the communication process, and it facilitates proactivity. Now, for whatever reason, some practitioners often do not plan, and that's sometimes because of lack of time, sometimes the belief that it blocks creativity, sometimes that it creates rigidity, sometimes the fact that a plan becomes outdated and it doesn't fit with the sort of open systems approach that many creative people have. But generally speaking, in vast proportion of cases, PR practitioners have a plan, they stick to the plan, and other issues emerge quite obviously. Things change and they adapt to that. In textbooks, you'll often find this explained in diagrammatical form, from Cutlip, Centre and Broom's 4 stages, where you look at a situation, you develop a strategy and a plan, you then implement it as the 3rd stage, and then you evaluate it, being the 4th. And Anne Gregory has a more detailed analysis where she looks at the environmental analysis, from which you establish aims and objectives. Then you look at your publics, who you want to speak to, then you create the message, then you develop the strategy and the tactics, the plan itself. You work to timescales, you work within budget, you evaluate, you review everything, and then you come back again. And so you get this circle of continuing strategical approach. It's important, I think, to look at those particular textbooks and analyse them and come up with a diagram that suits you as a young practitioner. For me, there are a number of stages which personally I would go through. And the first is when I'm working with a client or I'm working within my organisation, I'm looking at the overall vision. And this is time when I look at the issues generally before the planning process. So I look at the vision and general objectives of the organisation, its mission statement, the brand and the sub-brands within it, and who we are, what we stand for, where do we want to go. And that quite often involves looking at where the company is. Is it a startup company? Is it about to go through a period of significant growth? Is it in an era of maturity, or is it declining? And then what sector are we in? And that, for example, strategic thinking will be very different in the fast moving consumer goods industry, where quite often you have to think quickly, where planning is continually changing and adapting. And then I would examine things like the personality of the organisation, its identity, its history, its beliefs, its attitude to people, the product range. Some of the products might be brands in their own right. Look at actions and policies from the past, look at sourcing policy, look at the general culture. And that, I think, is very, very important, to take time to look and to study the client and what has happened in the past and where it intends to go. So that would be very much stage 1. And then dig deeper than that and look at any hostility or apathy or prejudice or ignorance that exists, and then to do a communication audit. 2 approaches: a macro level, where you're looking at external issues, do an external audit, and often people in business refer to that as the epistle factor. So you're looking at social, technological, economic, political, information, legal and environmental issues, and you're examining that. And internally you're doing a SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats within the organisation. So, for example, social issues might be demographic changes, it might be social attitudes generally, it might be purchasing habits, economic might be a change in interest rate, levels of employment, energy costs, political might be a change in government, it might be to do with political alliances, it might be to do with new trade legislation, and so on. And then if you look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats within an organisation, strength might be its leadership or its workforce or a particular product or profit. Weaknesses might be, it might be a very traditional company, an outdated company. It might have a mirror image, it might have some poor services, it might have some poor technology, it might have handled a crisis particularly badly. Opportunities might be interest in its services and products. It might be to do with media interest. It might be new market opportunities. Threats might be takeover, potential takeover, violence from activists, old technology, or a shortage of skilled staff. And all the time you're building a picture. And you might add to that picture an understanding by focus groups, questionnaires, interviews, telephone interviews, some content analysis of documents, an internal audit, some more informal research, or you might go formal and look at Mintel reports, Gallup reports, Murray reports, studies from universities and interest groups. And all of a sudden you gather a picture. Now, a client doesn't necessarily want you to summarise the epistle, the SWOT analysis and the research that you've done. They would often want a simple summary. So from all that, you as a PR consultant might come to a conclusion that there are 4, 5, 6, 10 issues that are standing out. And quite often I would list those and take the client through those particular issues, and we would get agreement as to what the focus should be and what we need to tackle, whether they're opportunities, whether they're threats, whatever they are. And then we establish clear general aims. Quite obviously we've got to make sure that they are realistic, that they're doable. And there might be things like to make a company or brand or product known in a new market. It's as general as that. Or to improve the calibre of job applicants, to build the chairman's profile, to protect against takeover, or to regain community confidence. All those things, as you note, are quite general. And then objectives. So with every aim, we then look at specific objectives, and quite often in text you'll come across this phrase SMART, which stands for that objectives should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time sensitive. Now that is important, and a lot of young practitioners and students in particular find this actually quite difficult. So a community objective might be to double job applicants from local schools within 2 years. So you've got this particular measurable factor of 2 years. In the trade it might be to ensure 50 top dealers attend an annual dealers conference. So again, you've got something measurable in 50. Consumer might be to increase purchase of a product by 6% in 6 months. So there you've got two measurable factors, the 6% and the 6 months. And in media terms, it might be to get positive coverage of a new product with the correct messages, let's say on local channels like UTV and BBC Northern Ireland. Now again, that's measurable. You've mentioned UTV, you've mentioned BBC, you've mentioned positive coverage. You've mentioned positive messages or correct messages. Now all those things, it is possible to go back and to measure. So those would be objectives. Now that's very, very important, because without the measurable objectives, then how can you evaluate whether your strategy has been successful or not?